Hello, my name is Zelia, and welcome back to my podcast conversation with Celia. And this is Sunday, April 14th. And today we're going to discuss the podcast, the mini series theme available on the streaming service Global Play. A few days ago, I watched theme on the streaming service, and I gotta tell you, it's very bleak and thought-provoking to say the least. Now, in this episode, I will discuss the plot lines through the main characters, and go by memory on certain aspects of the show, and I'll also discuss what I liked, what I disliked, and how it could be improved concerning the fact the series was 10 episodes long, so let's get right into it. So to give you a little bit of backstory, the show theme is based on a book written by Fernanda Torres, who appears in the show as one of the relatives of Celeste, one of the relatives of the main characters. And it came out on Global Play on October 2023. And I watched it out of curiosity after I just finished watching Chase the Charm, which is another popular novella, which is currently airing on Global. But back to the story. But the whole plot focuses on nine main characters, which consist of four couples and a bachelor, and and it's a period piece that spans from 1968 to 2012. It shows the pretty much the trials of tribulations of the couples throughout the time periods, which is the late 60s, early 70s, the mid to late 70s, the 90s, and 2012. Now, to get into the storylines, the four main couples consist of Sarah and Ruth, who are projected as the perfect couple, but it's just on the surface. Then there's Suya and Jorge, who are the Afro-Brazilian couple that remain together despite Silvio's toxicity. Silvio and Irene, and last but not least, there's Irene and Alvaro. I meant to say Silvio and Norma. I keep getting the characters' names mixed up, so apologize. And the third wheel of the group is Ribeiro, the lifeguard, who sleeps with younger women, which I will get to in a sec. But concerning the season series is called Theme, it deals with themes like life and death, which makes it so bleak. In fact, and I forgot, this will also be, since I will discuss major plot lines and major plot points, there's spoilers for those who haven't watched it. So if you want to watch it, don't listen to this podcast. But if you don't want to watch it, you can you continue listening. But the first person to die in the friend group is Cyro, who dies of complications of cancer. And it reunites everyone in the friend group with everyone except his wife or ex-wife Ruth attending his funeral. And pretty much to show the stories of the main characters is told in flashback form. But let's get into the first couple, which is Cyro and Ruth, who meet at a party and quickly fall in love. And that on the surface, their marriage is the perfect out of the couples, but their relationship slowly falls apart because of Ruth's desire to have children, which is impossible on Cyro's part because he's impotent, and his insecurity about him not having children leads to him pretty much cheating on Ruth and getting involved with Sylvia's lifestyle to a degree. In fact, Cyro ends up believing that Ruth was cheating on him with Ribeiro, the bodyguard dude, which upsets Ruth and pushes Ruth to sleep with Ribeiro, which results in her becoming pregnant with Zhao. And even after they have their son Joao, which Cyril believed wasn't his because he can't have kids, Cyril still pretty much does his cheating, which he gets caught by Ruth. And while at the house, they have an argument, which Cyril reveals him being sterile, which upsets Ruth to the core. And Ruth in 1996, she's pretty much kind of like a recluse to a degree. And she has a talk with the priest at Cyril's funeral, which reveals the flashback of Ruth's one-night stand with Ribeiro. In fact, it ends with her the 90s section of the episodes ends with Ruth discussing with Joel about his paternity. Then there's Celia and Neto, the token black couple of the fan group, were also the most stable and who had the longest lasting relationships. Neto and Celia, I'm sorry if I get the character names confused, they meet on the beach, which is the guy's favorite hangout it makes sense because it takes place in Rio de Janeiro. And it's pretty much a meet cute moment where it's love at first sight, and he pretty much does the typical pursue your crush thing, which is pretty much stalk your crush at their workplace or where they live at, which I don't know what is it with this cliche of stalking the first woman you're in love with. But eventually Neto wins her over, but he doesn't win over her parents, while the mom, played by legendary Brazilian actress Ziza Moda, loves Neto. Her father doesn't. Her father, who's one of those typical overprotective parents that look down on any of their daughter's love interest parents, isn't fond of Neto, but they do eventually get married and have a family with two children, a son, Murilo, and a daughter, Dilma. And I stated earlier, they're the only one of the friend group to have a stable, long-lasting marriage, despite of Silvio's machinations. And the marriage sadly ends when Celia dies of natural causes, which pretty much breaks and devastates Neto so much. And despite his children trying to help him cope with Celia's death and try to get him out of his depression, he unfortunately overdoses on a bunch of pills and pretty much deletes himself. And the only conflicts with Celia and Neto was Silvio, since when we're introduced to Celia and Neto at Cyrus' funeral, Celia isn't fond of Silvio, and even pretty much leaves the funeral when Silvio invites everyone to a bacchanal after Cyrus' funeral. And another observation note, like, I watched a lot of, since I am American, I watched a lot of black cinema growing up, which would make sense because, never mind. But even though I feel that they should have been more developed as characters, which I get to in my what I disliked about Theme. I do enjoy the fact that they're one of the few positives portrayal of a black couple that I've ever seen on television. And the fact they remain together till death do us part, which I have to tip my hat to. Then there's Alvaro and Irene, who also be at the same party where Cyril and Ruth meet, and Alvaro instantly falls in love with Irene, who was best around with her man, and Irene plays hard to get it only gets to Alvaro because pretty much everyone in the friend circle were in a relationship or they were married, which be like that sometimes. You have some people want to pretty much be in a relationship just because their friends are in a relationship, and everything goes downhill from there with Irene becoming pregnant and failing to get an abortion with their daughter Rita. And then as the relationship progresses, it's shown that pretty much Irene wasn't cut out to be a mother or a wife, and she winds up. And after Silvio pretty much just says something about Irene at the Roch Game party, she starts frequenting the pool club where she has an affair with a man she meets there, which ends because the man found out that she was married. That was shown in the 90 segment of the episodes that Irene is having issues with Rita, which would make sense considering how she treated Rita as a child. But then Rita has behavioral problems or behavioral issues, like her tendency to cry a lot and her jumping on the bed. And Alvaro's story concludes when after leaving the doctors, he gets hit by a car, and Rita, who seems to be an activist or protester, calls her mom Irene and tells her of Alvaro's death, with Irene being the one to identify Alvaro's body and being the one to identify identify the body and attend the funeral. And Rita, she imagines herself having a conversation with Alvaro, pretty much making amends with him posthumously. And Irene, the character, she kind of irks me because she pretty much led Alvaro on. Like, she could have just simply rejected his proposal and be single. But then again, she didn't want to be left out, like, since everyone in the friend group was taken. And the last couple we're discussing is Norma and Silvio. Now, Silvio, who's pretty much the toxic friend influence, he kind of reminds me of Quentin from The Best Man if you watch the movie. Edie also kind of is like the male Irene, but Silvio meets Norma at Cyril and Ruth's wedding. And he, like Irene, only got with Norma because Norma, who's Ruth's cousin, by the way, because he didn't want to be left out within the friend group of having a partner. And even after getting married to Norma, he still pretty much continues to be a lover boy. It's obvious that Silvio isn't a one-woman man, since he brags to his lucky number he always sleeps with 2 women. And he becomes even more emboldened when he inherits an apartment from his dad and uses it as pretty much his bachelor pad. Despite being married and having 2 children, Ignacio, who's a doctor, and Wanda. And eventually, he be at the World Cup party that the friend group are having. He beats Susanna, who happens to be the girlfriend of Ribeiro, the lifeguard, and pretty much breaks the friend code and takes Ribeiro's girlfriend. Like I said, Silvio is a toxic playboy. And then he and Susanna are joined by her friend Britt, which they have a lifelong throuple. And I should note that this series is very matured and has a lot of X scenes, which I also have to caution if you're planning to watch the series, in which I looked away at. And he eventually deserts and leaves Norma and his children for Susanna and Britt, even not showing up at Christmas just to fool around with them. And it gets worse when he has to look after Anil, Ignacio, and Wanda when Norma's at work. He pretty much exposes them to his lifestyle and almost abandons them at the bar, which results in him putting Ignacio and presumably Vonda away. But in 1995, his lifestyle pretty much catches up with him when his son Ignacio diagnosed him with lung problems or with pulmonary problems, and he winds up pretty much everything was already falling apart for him since Susanna, she had to leave to pretty much bail Brits out of jail when she got caught with drugs. And he feels a void by having to Lady of the Nights pose as Brits and Susanna, and when Susanna pretty much catches this, she leaves him and tries to follow her and winds up in the carnival where he pretty much dies, probably either of an overdose or probably because of those lung issues. But I do know that his hedonistic lifestyle does kill him. It is Ignacio who has to identify the body, and he writes pretty much a scathing obituary on him, a funeral invite. And I should know that Norma and Celia, they're the well-adjusted out of the friend group in regards to the women. And Neto and Alvaro, they're the most well-adjusted out of the friend group for the men. And last but not least, there's Ribeiro, the bachelor lifeguard. And man, Ribeiro, he can't get any luck with women, though, to be fair. Most of the women he sleep with are half his age or younger women. Mad, but then again, it's a period piece, and it wasn't as frowned upon back in those days. The first love interest were introduced to, I forgot her name. She pretty much left him because she fell pregnant. And then the second major love interest is Susanna. When he met at the beach, and with the Susanna character, like Susanna, she's pretty much walking fan service. Like almost 75% of her screen time is her barely wearing anything or wearing nothing essentially. But Susanna, she's pretty much your typical 70s free-spirited bohemian woman. And Ribeiro and Susanna, they quickly fall in love. But eventually, Ribeiro gets turned off by Susanna's lifestyle, which leads to her, and when she confronts her about sleeping with Silvio, she pretty much admits it so many words, and he kicks her out of the apartment. Then Ribeiro, he winds up having a New Year's Eve encounter with Ruth, which results in João being born. Though Ribeiro doesn't know about it. In fact, the first time João's paternity is brought up is when Neto tells Alvaro at the funeral when they're leaving from burying Ciro how João isn't Ciro's biological child, which causes Alvaro to be curious in the last episode, which is brought up to last episode, which is the episode I'll discuss. But in the 90s, Ribeiro, he's messing around with yet another younger woman, but this time this resulted in him getting called by her dad and brother, who beat the crap out of him. Like literally, they beat the crap out of them. But in the last episode, there's a lot of revelations in the last episode. First off, to include the storylines with surviving characters. While having a conversation with Alvaro and Ribeiro, Alvaro reveals the whole paternity thing, which causes Ribeiro to put two and two together at home and realize that he's João's biological father. And when he goes to Ruth's home to confront her about not pretty much telling him about João's actual paternity, he finds Ruth pretty much in a weakened state, and Norma tells him that Ruth has been suffering from Alzheimer's. And when Robert asks her about João, Norma states that Zhao moved to Germany and where he lives with a family, with his family, and Norma coaxes Fruit by singing to her Divino Marveloso by the late great Gal Costa, which, for those that don't get the some of the song, that was the song that Ruth sang when she met Cyro, and that's the song that plays at the end credits. And there's also some good symbolism. It's also probably a nod or tribute to Gal Costa since she passed away in 2022. And I feel that her, considering what's going on now with her state, I feel like her death is suspicious, but moving on. And the revelation breaks Rivero so much that he pretty much dies, and at his funeral, since he was cremated, his ashes are thrown by the attendees, which includes Norma and Alvaro, and his sister Celeste, played by Fernanda Torres, the writer of the book. And then the other revelation was that Cyro, he didn't die from the cancer, he died from assisted suicide. And the nurse that took care of him was the baby he helped deliver at Carnival in 1969, which I forgot to mention this. While leaving from the carnival, Silvio was harassing a pregnant lady, and it harassed her into labor, and since she couldn't reach the hospital because of the carnival, that she had to give birth from the bench. And with Cyro have to deliver the baby. It would cause Cyro to realize this was when Maria Clara, the nurse, discussed how her mother gave birth to her in a bench, which caused some controversy, scandal, with Cyro putting two together, realizing that the baby that he helped give birth to in a bench was the nurse taking care of him, which was a very full circle moment. And that, my friends, is the end of Theme. And let's discuss my likes and dislikes. What I liked about the series was how they portrayed the time period. Like, you get to see a glimpse of what it was like in 1960s, 70s, and 90s Brazil, especially with the clothes and the music. And when it comes to Silvio's storyline, like, you really get a glimpse of just how hedonistic the 70s was in particular. Like, the 70s was that wild of a decade, and what's even more jarring was that of how hedonistic the 70s Brazil was. It's kind of jarring because, in fact, all this hedonism happened during the Brazilian dictatorship, which it's kind of like a contrast to a degree. And I know that people saw that as a con, but I also like how they aged the actors up from the 60s to the 2012. Since all the actor series, they're all in their late 30s to early to mid 50s. Now, my dislike with the series was the underdevelopment of Celia and Neto, which is a very big elephant room moment. Like, Celia, and I know you can only fit so much into a 10-episode series, but Celia and Neto, considering the fact they were like the token Afro-Brazilian couple, they could have been a lot more utilized more or have a great storyline. Like, the only thing I liked about the story is that they weren't toxic, they weren't toxic, or I'm thinking of the term, unperfectly matched like the other couples, and that their marriage was able to last 2 decades. But concerning the fact that they were both an Afro-Brazilian couple, they could have discussed some prejudice storyline of them moving to a suburban neighborhood. In fact, there's a scene where after a night out with the guys, Neto gets arrested and Ruth has to pick up at the police station. And also, I'm not counting this as a dislike, but it also feels kind of based considering the fact all the male characters passed away by the end of the series, and only three, Norma, Ruth, and Irene survive, yet Ruth being afflicted with Alzheimer's. And seeing Ruth in her state and Norma coaxing her was like the hardest scene to watch in the series. In fact, the funeral scenes and the death scenes, they were kind of like hard to watch, especially Neto, to see a man so heartbroken, unable to live his life without his wife for many years, that he deletes himself, is very heartbreaking. And if I were to give it a rating, I would give it an 8. I still enjoy the series. Still had to look away at certain scenes. And Silvio, man, Silvio is quite a character. But I hope you enjoyed my review, and I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.